Hello, everybody.
Oh,
Hello, hello.
How's Wednesday looking?
halfway,
What was that, Mike?
halfway.
Halfway. All right, there you go. Well, technically, since it's afternoon for you, you're kind of over the hump.
Except that I took Monday off.
Oh, so you're screwed. Let's give you a minute here to get the folks joining in. Abhishek, welcome.
Hello.
Abhishek, hey, Dan. Dan, it's a mighty impressive data center you have there.
Hey, I got a lot of computing to do here.
There we go. Is it confidential? Is it confidential? Is it
Yeah.
confidential? That's the key question we're asking.
Yep.
Cool. I don't see Ashley yet, which is unusual. We have Stefano joining us.
Good morning, all.
Good morning. You don't look like Ashley.
That's probably a good thing for Ashley. Yes, indeed. I am filling in today.
Excellent. That's great. Ronak, welcome. Glad you joined us.
Hello, hey there. Hi, Mike. Abhishek, sorry, just Zoom was loading and
Oh, hang on a second. Let's give everybody just a moment to get started. I think our agenda is going to be, oops, left side. Hang on, I have an issue here. Just give me a moment. Cool. Let's see. I think we've got almost everybody coming in there. All right. Why don't we show you one thing? Sorry, I'm having an issue here. Why don't we go ahead and jump in if I can get my laptop to work for me. Why don't we jump in, everybody? We got a nice turnout. Thanks for joining for our midsummer edition of the meeting. We've got a fairly compact agenda today, so I think we'll be able to get out early. But I thought it'd be good to check in since it's been a while and we have an update on our research project. Let's just start with, where am I here? Sorry. Are you guys seeing that? Let's just start at the top here. We are the Outreach Committee. We are the Competition Committee Consortium. We operate under the antitrust policy. Please be familiar with it. And as a reminder, we seek to be a community focused on open source licensed projects, securing data in use and accelerating the adoption of competitive computing technology through open collaboration. All are welcome, projects meeting criteria welcome, and as members, contributors, and leaders, we pledge to make the participation in our community harassment-free experience for everyone. We have on our agenda today, we've got a quick check-in on the webinars, an update on the Everest project, open source summit, and then other kind of general updates and discussion that we can have along the way. Let's see, do we have a quorum? Not quite, I don't think.
See, and I don't know if there's time. I think during the TAC meeting, we had talked about adding the diversity and inclusion topic into today. It looks like maybe that didn't get communicated.
I did not get that one, Dan. We can certainly make that a part of the conversation if we'd like. So
Yeah, so that's maybe like a 20-minute discussion. So I don't know if that fits in today or if it's better if I come back with that at your next meeting.
Let's see how time goes.
Okay.
I will have to drop at 1:30, but let's see how time goes, and if not, we can certainly schedule for the next meeting.
Okay.
Apologies if I missed that. So I didn't catch that notice along the way. So. We had a couple action items. Actually, sorry. So on the approval, I don't think we have quorum. Is that right, Stefano?
Yeah, that's correct. I think we're just
Okay.
All
All right, that's okay. We're doing our auto approvals anyway, so that is not as much of an issue. So we had very brief action items. I don't know if, Stefano, if you know the status of the second one, or the first or the second ones.
Yes, I believe that's been added to the tech agenda for the next meeting.
Okay, great. Okay, good. And are you aware of any of the arrangements for Open Source Summit?
I know that the documents have all been signed, but I don't know any other details.
Okay, all right. Okay, we'll talk about that over then. All right.
I believe also that we have a panel, Ava, me, and Steve. I believe we have a panel accepted.
Oh, great.
Ava, is that your understanding?
Yes, we do have a panel accepted. I think we all just need to register to confirm it.
I'm working my way around that. It's kind of being interesting. But I'll get there.
What's the topic, Mike?
I think it's confidential computing, and I think
Well, I was guessing that much.
I believe
It's more
it's
than-
sort of an update to like what's been happening in the consortium, the evolution of the projects over the past year.
Got it, okay. Great, I'll make a note of that there for the record. And that will be Mike, Ava, and Stephen?
Yeah.
Mr. Wally? Great, okay, cool. Great. Did anyone have any? Now, I know we're going to have a TAC discussion about webinar topics, but always open to nominations if anyone has any. My continual plug for nominations for topics. All right, we'll see what comes out of the TAC meeting. All right. Why don't we actually, Rana, do you want to go ahead and give us an update on the Everest, on how we're doing on the research project?
Sure, I can kick us off. And again, thank you everyone for doing the process.
So I'm missing your audio. It may just be me, but.
Ronak, your voice is very muffled.
Okay, so Abhishek, can you take over?
Now you sound great, Rana. Now you sound great.
Okay, fine. So I was just saying, so today we want to share the next set of updates on the research out here. I think a few pointers I wanted to clarify, right, because these could be questions that come in. One is the document that we present will go through what we would call as our editorial formatting design cycle, which we haven't done so far. So what we will do is, we lock in the research, the material, and the content and the messaging. Once that finalized, we do the rest of the piece, right? So I just wanted to call that out. In addition to that, I think the team, we've been speaking to several of the consortium members, but also to external SMEs and other market participants. And I think we've now started to get very warm reception from everyone as we started explaining the concept of where we wanted to go ahead. So there are large banks who are experimenting with it and investing in it. We've been able to speak to them. Some cloud vendors, the likes of Alibaba and others in other geographies where we wanted a deeper trend. Some other technology vendors which were not part of the consortium, we were able to speak to them. So I think across AWS, HP, Dell, and even service providers, right? Persistent Systems and HCL and Tech Mahindra, which are very engineering focused, right? Wipro and others, right? Who go deep into building products. I think we've been able to kind of get some SMEs out there to just contribute. So it's been a wide variety of people who have contributed in terms of our understanding of the market and how that is shaping up. So you'll see some of that coming together.
That's great.
So what we wanted to do is give you a bit of a high-level update on where we are, what we are doing, and how the research is progressing. And definitely there's a lot to unpack in the deliverable. So we might not be able to cover everything on the call today, but we will share the document post the call, and then take more of the offline comments, review feedback as well. So
Great.
I just wanted to be outlining that. With that, Abhishek, do you want us to quickly walk us through key findings here?
Yeah, I'll do that. So thank you, Ronak, for setting the context, and I hope my voice is loud and clear.
Yeah.
Yep, you sound good.
Great. So in terms of the things that we plan to cover in today's discussion, so let me just quickly give you a recap of what we did last. So last time when we connected, we talked about initial draft of our market opportunity assessment. and the kind of templates that we are building to do demand and supply side market analysis. In today's discussion, we take it to one notch deeper. We have completed the demand side as well as the supply side analysis from a market opportunity assessment, and have finalized the overall TAM number for the confidential computing market. We are also in the advanced stages of finalizing the key market characteristics. So breaking down the market opportunity by the kind of use cases that are gaining traction, the kind of business impact that confidential computing has to offer for enterprises across different industry segments. So those are some of the things which we are building, and it's an advanced version. I will quickly touch upon how it is shaping up. Also, this provides a draft of the segment specific growth and TAM. So when I talk about segment, this is not only about industry, geography, but also from a supply side point of view, the key the market segments across key categories of software, hardware, and services. How does that market segmentation looks like from a size as well as from a growth perspective? So we have provided some of those perspectives in this deck. As to the overall RFI process and the kind of interaction that we have been having, so as Ronak mentioned that we have over the past few weeks, we have made reach outs to a lot of the non-CCC members that Ronak just mentioned. With regards to the CCC members, we still struggle to get the RFI inputs from some participants in the study. So again, would like to request your assistance in getting some of the responses, if not on an RFI, but a 30-minute conversation to just validate some of our estimations, market estimations for that particular supplier or for similar suppliers. So it will just make the analysis more robust. So would request
and Abhishek, and one thing to add here and a request for all, right? So even if you're not able to provide data, but even if you can come on a call and validate our estimates and give us a directional sensing, what it allows us to do is it just increases the richness of what we have and the accuracy of it much more. So would really appreciate if all of you could do that. I think that's a sincere request. And again, we are happy to revise our estimates if there is any bits of feedback from the individual suppliers, on the market from a supply side estimate out here.
Hey, a question on this. I'm looking at this list, and this looks like the CCC members that you were targeting. What about people that are not part of the CCC, or at least are not part of this outreach committee? Like we've talked before about, like, say, Amazon, for instance. Was there also an attempt to have discussions with them, and is that tracked separately or something?
Yes. So, Ronak, you're speaking on mute.
No, why don't you go ahead? Yeah, you're saying. Go ahead. I can add if you miss anything.
Yeah, sure. So, Jesse, as we mentioned in the beginning of the call, we have made reach outs and we have connected, gathered inputs from the non-CCC members. It's just that all of those discussions have been part of, a confidentiality agreement between us and them. So we may not be able to quote them directly that we have gathered some of these inputs directly from them. So that's why you don't see some of those names on the slide. But as Ronak mentioned, we have had conversations with AWS, a couple of stakeholders from AWS. We have successfully validated some of the numbers, some of our estimations that we have on AWS market numbers. Same on the hardware side, we have had interactions with Dell and HP as well. So and then on the long tail of software vendors, we have had a few interactions as well. So
okay, yeah, that's good. So I think you answered my question, and I understand confidentiality. So
Right.
this is not the complete list of everybody that you have at least sought input from.
These are the people who will be cited on the report as having participated.
Yeah. Yeah.
David, did you happen to connect the AMD folks?
I don't think that got finished. Let me follow up on that again. That started but didn't conclude. I'll keep tracking them. Thank you for the reminder on that.
I can, like, I have the contacts in email if you want me to.
Yeah. Let me try. I'll try again on that. Let me do that. I'll do that while we're talking here.
Yeah, and also we were trying to get through the IBM Red Hat organization. I don't think we've had success. So I think the request here is over the next 2 weeks, right, if there is a possibility for the team for the individual organizations to contribute in whatever way possible, I think that just kind of enhances the richness of the research. So I think
Looks like a comment on that from Ben, that the data wasn't available to provide.
On the Red Hat side, yeah. No,
Yeah.
so anyways, IBM has an interest. I did send it to their folks. There's a gentleman who was trying, I sent him the information to reach out to you, but I think it's, I think maybe there's some cross wiring happening. So maybe we need to take this offline.
Okay. All right, I'll take that fine.
Also, Ronek, and from the Anjuna side, I keep getting a couple of times that we could talk, and none of the times ever work. The first set was all in the middle of the night, and the second set, I got 3 days that don't reflect when someone's in the office that's able to talk to you. So I think if we can just, rather than just sending me calendar links that don't work, if we can have an email conversation or something and just set up a time. Not that we don't want to talk to you, but the times you set just don't work in terms of being able to confirm someone's participation that quickly. So
sure, happy to do that. Yeah.
So that let me just quickly take this. Start with the market opportunity assessment side, right? As we discussed in the last call, there is a supply side and there's demand side analysis, and there is a set methodology that we are following both the sides.
Abhishek, you're kind of fading in and out. Is there a way we can do anything with your audio?
I think this should be better.
So Abhishek, I think there's like a slight disturbance in the background.
Okay, am I the only one that doesn't hear him at all?
I don't hear anything. I'm like, did my audio just go out again? So, okay.
Yeah, we don't hear you at all.
No, yeah, and I think
is it better?
That's better, yeah.
Now we can hear you.
Okay, great. So let me know whenever I break off. So getting back to the numbers, right? So from a demand side analysis, the methodology that we follow is around talking to enterprises, getting a sense of their estimates in terms of how much investment they are doing as of today in confidential computing and what sort of traction they foresee in the next 3 to 5 years sort of a time frame. On the supply side, as well, we have followed a similar sort of analysis, but more from a supplier's perspective, the key players that are there in the confidential computing market. The initial reaction from most of the players, and that's a common theme across majority of them. The majority of the work that's happening today is at a POC stage. So from a revenue potential perspective, and we're talking about total addressable market over here and not the total revenue numbers, right? So from a revenue estimates standpoint, there is not a lot of significant activity that's happening today, but most of the vendors, especially the cloud vendors, all of them are really aggressive in terms of their estimates about how the market will shape up and how the market growth will happen in the confidential computing market size.
Hey,
So
can you clarify the time frame? I don't know if I'm seeing the top of this slide, but can you clarify the time frame that this is referring to?
This is 2021.
Today.
Okay.
Current state.
So
Okay.
this is current state. Okay.
Yeah. So, and this is to just give an overview. Now, let me get into specifics of it. So, from a demand side, right, assessment last time we discussed, this is how we see the growth from 1.9 to 2.1 to 58 to 60, and this is the best case scenario. And then we discussed around how this number breaks across majority of the industries and how the TAM.
So, could you slow down a second? Because the slides look awfully quick. Can you go back 2 slides and just give us 10 seconds to absorb?
So yeah, then so I will
go
just
back 1 more, please.
The top level numbers.
Yeah, the top one more. No, the numbers that had that chart that was straight up. The one that got to
that
20,
one, the 58 to
yeah,
60.
that one.
That
Thank you. Okay. All right.
So Linda, this was a slide that we discussed last time, wherein we discussed how did we do the demand side estimations.
Okay, no, that's fine. Okay, just go a little bit slower on these because it's Okay, I'm fine to go to the next one.
Now, this demand side number, further breaks down into the industries and not getting into the exact methodology again from a demand side perspective. What we eventually did from our demand side is that we ended up getting to final numbers across major industries from a confidential computing TAM perspective. And this slide talks about the final numbers across majority of the industries. The last 3 columns. So this is the 2021 number.
What are those percentages there? Like that's the percentage of workloads that we'll use.
I think it's percent of the IT spend, right? That's what the earlier slide said.
Yeah, there's a caption at the bottom.
Okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
that doesn't explain it. It's so
Percentage of application, got it. So 12% of the BFSI 10 to 12% of the BFSI application stack will run in confidential computing in 5 years. Got it. Okay.
Okay.
That's interesting. All right.
Okay.
It's a pretty slow ramp over the next 3 with a sharp uptick from 3 to 5 years from now.
Yes.
Classic,
so again,
classic hockey
just
stick.
for a,
I'm looking at those last 3 columns, and yeah, that's a hockey stick.
And again, it's very interesting, right? Because again, given BFSI is kind of second nature to me. Again, as I look at this market, what's happening is the awareness of the technology in itself is concentrated in a very few large enterprises, and also within that, in what you would typically call the CTO organization. The business case of it is not yet built. But what is happening is, as we speak to a lot of the consulting and system integration players, they see this business case to be built over the next 2 to 3 years, post which you will start seeing migration and adoption. And one sense that we always do is, in the longer term, we tend to overestimate the the adoption potential of technology. So we've been very, very cautious in kind of putting these numbers, though they seem like a hockey stick. This is what we would call as that trying to be conservative, because that would apply.
That's a good explanation, and I get the logic. Is that going to be captured in the report? It seems to me a lot of people, if they were to just look at these numbers, they'd wonder what happens between 2024 and 2026 that makes such a sea change of results. And so, some text that explains that inflection point and kind of, as you just described, what leads up to it, I think is going to be really relevant.
I agree. I was about to say that, Jesse.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You need to capture what those bullets are you just told us about.
Absolutely. And again, what we've also done is, I know we might not be able to go to all of this, Abhishek, today, but we do have a sense on this breakage by industries and use cases, and like we have tabular structure which goes into the depth of it as following material, and I think a lot of that will bring alive the true picture. But yeah, I think at this slide level, definitely we need to add the commentary to make the numbers alive and say why they are so. So I think that's a good feedback. Yeah.
Yeah, so some of the commentary we are building, and and the idea is to bring out how the adoption will increase and what are the factors which are specific to each industry that will lead up to that. So that we are building.
Could you flip back to the slide that showed the graph of the world? That one, thank you.
Yeah.
So let me get to the supply side, and maybe it will be in a flow which makes sense. Let me just okay. So here is what we ended our discussion on last time on demand side TAM estimation across industries. Now getting to supply side, right? How does the market look like from a supply perspective, and how does it break across hardware, software, and services market, right? So from a supply perspective, as I said, the overall market size today and the total addressable market estimations that we arrive at is lower from as compared to the demand side estimations that we populated. And the supply side today, the number stands at somewhere around $1.4 billion. But in terms of growth, right, the supply and demand side growth estimates come out to be almost in a similar ballpark. And as you see in 2026, and again, this is the best case scenario, the total addressable market again stands at 52 to 54 US dollar billion. On the supply side analysis as well, there are.
We lost you again.
Abhishek, we lost.
Abhishek, yeah, we lost him. Yeah.
So Sushil, maybe would you want to take this over?
Yeah, sure. I'll take this over. So what I'll do, in cognizance of the time we have, I'll quickly just take you through the breakdown of all of this. So first of all, when we say hardware, right, and each of these segments, when we say hardware, we mean both in terms of the silicon, chips, processors that are manufactured, and also the server market, right? So there's a certain portion of the market that's sort of buying and assembling servers and selling it. So that is also included in hardware. So in case you feel, the number is slightly higher, that's kind of the reason, because we're not just including silicon chips, we're also including the servers that are sold by, say, Dell or HP, right? In terms of the software, the two main components we're looking at is cloud service providers and what we are broadly classifying as enablement software. So this could be software that's used to enable and adopt the core computing paradigm. And then services, the pulse we are getting after speaking to some of the largest service providers within our network is that it's next to nothing currently in comparison. But we expect that to sort of ramp up slowly post another 3 years. So that's sort of a quick gist. What we are essentially looking at from a supply side perspective is looking at the major vendors, trying to sort of estimate the kind of revenue that they are getting from confidential computing. Again, some of this data did come from the RFI, some of it because we didn't get RFI inputs, we had to estimate ourselves. But that's sort of the starting point, and then we sort of break it down from there. Abhishek, we can go on to the next slide, and I'll also take a pause for any.
Yeah, just to clarify from a services perspective, it's the traditional large GSIs as well as the professional services arms of ISVs and CSPs that we have considered here, and a majority of it today is coming in from that. So yeah, so going on to the next
question one. On the hardware, you said it included server OEMs. My question is, did any of the hardware segment that you could include, is this only servers, or did you also include any edge, client, IoT, or anything like that?
I'm not sure I got your question correctly.
So Sushil, the question was, in addition to the server pieces, did we also consider the devices, right? The IoT devices, edge devices, and the hardware for it. In the use cases, I see it, but in the market sizing is the question.
No, we did not.
No, we did not. We did not. So we took it from sort of the chip processor perspective. So if there is, say, a processor or some kind of chipset that's being used on the edge device, that will be included over here. That will be aggregated. But the overall cost of that device probably would not be on here. But we will try to look into that. Yes.
And again, it's open for discussion if you would want to include that. Yeah.
I get your answer that the silicon chipset OEMs is across everything, but the assembly stuff you'd only include it for server. I get that, and so thank you for being clear. I don't know whether the numbers would be necessary given that the silicon chipset covers everything, but it might be at least useful to know if you had a way of getting maybe what percentage of the silicon chipset OEMs were also categorized under the server assembly ones. In other words, what percentage of the chips would be targeted for server? That might be helpful, but I'm curious to know what others think. So.
Yeah, and we have that estimates, Sushil, if I'm not wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, we do have them, and maybe in the final output we can figure out a way to depict them.
Well, I mean, it's a good point, but it's so nuanced in that, what percentage of devices, whether that's a server, a client, or IoT, is the decision for the overall device going to be made based on this capability, right? So we have some evidence that, at least in the server world, decisions about those things can drive the overall sale. I don't know if we have evidence that would extend all the way to, a phone and its confidential computing capabilities, being a factor in the purchase of the overall device versus the chip that's in it. That's a tough one. I guess I agree. The more detail we have on what went into this report, the better we can interpret what that might mean for other spaces.
Yeah, I agree. Just being clear and giving the data and explaining what the data that you have is, as opposed to, I don't think there's a need to collect any more data, but just being clear about what you got. So I agree with Jesse.
Okay, fair enough. Again, I'll just pause if there are any other questions. Okay. Another just sort of quick mention on the hardware front is that we are including custom processors, like the ones that AWS is using. So that's another tidbit over there. In terms of the software, as I mentioned, we were dividing it in terms of cloud service providers. And we've included the major ones. So that's the Azure, AWS, GCP, Alibaba, IBM Cloud as well, and then certain other smaller ones. So those are sort of that's a major chunk of the market that we were looking at, and I think that fairly reasonably covers the market currently. On the enablement.
Can I ask a question about hardware? You said it includes custom processors such as AWS Graviton. Are you also including Nitro?
So,
if not, would you please do that? Which is an AWS custom processor?
Yeah. Okay. So,
great, thank you.
Okay. So the bit over here is that basically anything that is going into Nitro, right? Whether it be in terms of any kind of chipset, that will get included over here, whether it be in terms of Graviton or otherwise, right? So
Nitro is their chip. It's not Nitro is their custom chip. So
exactly,
it's not the same as Graviton. I mean, we don't need to talk about this now, but there's there's something that's not quite right there.
Well, I think I'm no expert either, but I think what might be a little confusing is that Graviton itself is not a security chip or even necessarily has a security component, nitro's really the security piece. In other words, lots of Graviton sales have nothing to do with confidential computing, I guess would be the way
Exactly.
to put that.
That's my point.
Yeah,
beyond
and
beyond
even
that,
Nitro, they've been pretty clear, at least in all the public documents that I've seen, they've never said that it encrypts the memory.
Right.
yeah. So to Ava's point, my belief is, although it's never been actually officially sort of checked, in that AWS haven't come to us about it, that the confidential computing consortium would be unlikely to say that it counts as a TEE and therefore isn't confidential computing as per our definitions.
However, according to AWS's definitions, it is. So I think we.
Do they use the phrase confidential computing?
I've never seen them
no,
use it.
No, but they do have Nitro enclaves. So they are creating their version of secure enclave.
They call it an
it's
enclave.
not
but
confidential
they-
computing.
Yeah, they call it an
I
enclave.
think we
but
need
I've
to take
never-
this off here, but I disagree. Yeah.
Well, I think yeah, maybe by CCC's definition, it doesn't fit. I do agree with that. But on the other hand, from a customer's perspective, who's looking to secure their data, meet regulatory requirements, I think they are often considering it as part of
So the
market
CCC
options.
has a job to do then,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah,
a different
and
question.
I think there's a very interesting question there on regulatory requirements, as was presented on the earlier slide, showing the different regions and their motivations for this. Would European regulators or California regulators view AWS Nitro as sufficient? And clearly, that's not anything that I could possibly answer, but I'm very curious to see what discussions happen around that.
Would this be a topic for the TAC to pick up as defining whatever AWS Nitro is as
Well, but the
an
TAC
adjacent
kind of
technology
has
category?
The TAC has said
Right.
basically.
So basically, for the TAC will take no position on any vendor-specific product, right? Mike is explaining that the TAC has a definition of confidential TEEs and a definition of confidential computing and TEEs, but it's up to vendors to do this. And the CCC should not be taking any. At least the current position of the CCC is that we don't take any position on any particular vendor product. Vendors can take positions, but the CCC doesn't.
But we could say if it doesn't fit into the definition of the RTE, if it doesn't fall into the CC's definition of a TEE, but it is, let's say, something else that's close that represents, if you categorized an Amazon Nitro enclave and you use a generic term to define technologies, including that and others, we could put that on the adjacent technology.
It depends what that generic term is. If that generic term is confidential computing, then absolutely not.
Yeah.
I don't think, can I break in here? I don't think this is the right place for this discussion, but I do think it is an extremely important discussion that warrants more than what we can give it here while Everest is on the phone.
I agree, Linda.
Okay.
So let us, Sushil and Abhishek, let's take that feedback, get that also checked through our channels, because eventually this is what we are saying, right? So we need to be aligned to the confidential computing definition for the research and how we're going about it. Yeah, let's
precisely, and based on your input, we can tweak the final output as well. Okay, going ahead, the sort of so what we also did was one of the asks was to sort of build a scenario analysis in terms of how the market would move. We chose to do it through the industry lens because we felt it's more nuanced on the industry front, how a scenario would pan out. So what we've done is we've tried to basis our understanding of the market, our experience, and the conversations we've had with stakeholders both within the CCC and outside of it. We've tried to sort of create three cases, the best, median, and worst case, and we've sort of plotted that and used that as the input for our estimates, both demand and supply side, right? And you can actually go through these offline. So for the three main factors or variables that we were using, we have sort of modeled the best, median, and worst case. As I said, right, you can take this offline and consume it and then come back to us in case you have any questions, because I think it will be kind of difficult to go through each one of these on this call, please.
Yeah, and like in the next call, and eventually I would was getting to it, in terms of a final readout. So in the final readout, what we would want to do is take you through all the details that we have on the slides over here, so that it's clear in terms of how some of these numbers are shaping up. And just to add to Sushil's point, right? So the three factors that we have considered over here for modeling the scenarios are awareness factors, privacy preserving potential, and the growth of enterprise infra spend. Awareness factor is again talking about how the enterprise awareness about confidential computing will increase over the next 5 years sort of a time frame, which was one of the factor in coming up with a demand side analysis. Privacy preserving potential is again in terms of number of applications that an enterprise would finally take to confidential computing over the next 5 years. And the growth of enterprise infra spend, this is more to do with how would the cloud adoption increase over the next 3 years or 5 years sort of a time frame. And then, based on this, these estimates across industries, we have come up with a TAM analysis across the three scenarios, the best case, median case, and worst case. So even, the underlying statement here would be, even in the worst case scenario of enterprise awareness about confidential computing and their willingness to spend into it, we see at least a 8x increase in the market size over the next 5 years. So I think that's the key takeaway from the scenario analysis, I would say.
Hey, can we back up for 1 second? I'm wondering if you can, I get awareness and I get growth of infrastructure spend. I'm trying to understand PPP and how it differs from those two. The privacy preserving, I think you said it's potential. So you're saying, is that the percent of their IT spend that has affinity to the need to protect privacy?
Yes. So we have these things defined over here. So when I say privacy preserving potential, this is percentage of technology portfolio that can benefit from confidential computing at a given time. And this is the set of application where a business case has been identified and where the enterprises are willing to spend into it, and not a potential set of application, but a set of application where the spend is happening, whether it at a POC stage or at a scaled adoption level.
I think we talked about
Okay,
this.
I'm surprised by those numbers. I understand why infrastructure spent might take a while to the vendors have to be ready, the solutions have to be ready, the integrators have to be comfortable with it to a point where they're easily providing those services and expanding the awareness. I get all of that. What I'm surprised at is the potential of something that could use confidential computing. I'm surprised those numbers are so low. I know in our studies we've shown a much higher potential demand. Whether how quickly that's filled is one thing, but a much higher potential demand than I'm seeing in this report.
Could you go back to that definition one more time? The page with the definition. Yeah, there. I think we talked about this last time. That really, I mean, at least the way we see it is that 100% of your technology portfolio can benefit from confidential computing. That's not the real key. And I think maybe this is just a wording thing. It's the percentage that you are willing to invest in at a particular time, not that can benefit. I don't understand why a huge amount couldn't benefit from confidential computing, but you may not be ready to invest in that in 2021 or 2024. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense. And I think the wordings needs to change in the slide, but in terms of our definition of privacy preserving potential, Linda, as you mentioned, this is the percentage of, if you see the footnote over here, wherein the enterprises are willing to spend on confidential computing.
Yeah. So I think that might address Jesse's question
Yeah,
there, because
okay.
I think we need to go back and make that clear in that definition slide, because otherwise it just sounds very weird. And I agree with you and what you're saying there, but the definition is a little bit obscure.
I agree. This footer gives I think, a more understandable explanation than maybe that first slide did.
So I'm just going to play it back to make sure we got it. That for a high tech, in 3 years' time, we'd expect them to be spending 6 to 8% of their investment on kind of applications on things that are using confidential computing.
No, so I would read it as for a high-tech enterprise, out of 100 applications that they have in their portfolio, 6 to 8% of them would be running on confidential computing.
Which is different. So that is just a footprint. That is just a footprint statistic.
It's not percent of spend. It's
Right.
percent of yeah.
Okay, that's what I was trying to
of your installed apps.
So that's
of
the app footprint, right? And this, okay. So then
in theory you could spend more, right? If those were a more expensive set of apps. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you
but
can
I thought were you
spend
Linda,
on one app. Yeah. So I don't think we're disagreeing with the numbers. I think we have to finesse the definition to make it clearer for the average person reading this.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, just checking time over here. So I think we stopped over here. And the scenario analysis we have covered, and this is how the market size estimates look. What we have done, subsequently, and then this is what we are building, is taking a segment-specific view across industries. So how does the TAM varies across industries? How does it varies across geographies? Again, all the perspectives over here are from a demand side and not from a supply side. So and because that we felt more robust from an analysis point of view, rather than getting to supply side where there were which was heavy on estimations, and rather than having a more primary input over from a demand side. So so over some of these analysis is coming in more from a demand side perspective. Then what we have subsequently done is, and to your earlier question on, how does the variation happens across industries and what are the factors that will contribute to it. So again, some of these commentaries are WIP, but essentially what we are trying to call out is how that hockey stick growth will happen. What are the factors that will eventually contribute to that? So some of those things we are covering at an industry level numbers across different scenarios. Finally, from a use case perspective as well, we are building out market potential or market opportunity analysis from a use case side. What are kind of the use cases that are gaining more traction in the market, and what sort of future potential do we see across those specific categories and subcategories? And the major categories identified are across a broader security lens, then multi-party computation, blockchain, edge, IoT. So these are the major buckets of use cases, and then we have we are categorizing it into sub use case categories. What we'll build on top of this is, how does the enterprise adoption is happening. So making it more real in terms of what is the sort of business case that some of the enterprises are building to do confidential computing. So which adds to the overall market characteristics that for a reader, for a BFSI enterprise who is reading this, can get a sense of what does a business case for confidential computing looks like. And same for some of the other industries. So that will build on top of this. So that's the update. Any questions, comments?
I was having a little trouble back on that, the color codes. Maybe if you could go to the previous slide. Do I interpret, can you go to the previous one? Yeah. Do I interpret anything from the direction of the flow of the colors? Like, is there a from green to yellow or from yellow to green, or is it just when I see green and yellow, does that just mean it's somewhere between them?
Yeah,
In other
it's
words, is there a
more
timing factor
latter.
there?
It's
Okay.
more latter rather than former. Yeah.
Okay, so there's just 4 levels. I'm sorry, 5 levels, and there's
Yeah.
no movement from one to the other. Okay.
And can I, again, I think we have a kind of consistent concern here. Can you define what market traction and future potential mean? I know that you know what that is, but I'm not sure if I'm looking at this that we would be able to
No,
easily
it
explain
looks
that.
like it's down in a footer, and maybe we just can't see the footer because
It
the way
says
it's
this
getting cut off.
qualitatively derived based on the market feedback perception of the use case. I think we need a little bit better definition.
Yeah, definitely we'll do that.
Sure. So, Abhishek, anything else from your end?
No.
Okay. So I think that's the update from our end. So what we'll do is I think we have some good feedback elements as we kind of work on this. We'll share this version with all of you, but also make some edits based on the feedback. And there were a few items that we need to kind of go back and check. So we're going to do that. And I think just to kind of going back on my first request is, any additional inputs and, participants from the consortium who have not yet provided their inputs, feel free to, please reach out to us. We will kind of incorporate all your data points. And even if it's not possible to do a structured RFI, having a conversation with us will be really helpful for us to validate our estimate. So that's my final request here.
So on that list, Renex, I noted 3 follow-ups in, and there may be others, which is, I think, Ben, you're going to follow up with the IBM folks to try and help coordinate that. I need to follow up with the AMD folks, and Linda, you'll work with Ronak on and Juna's input.
Yes.
Are there any other specific ones that you wanted to call out, Ronak, of other? I just want to make sure if there's any specific actions we got. I don't want to lose those.
None from mine, but Sushil, you are tracking all of the responses. Anything that we missed?
Yes. If we can actually get a connect with Google, that would be great as well.
Yeah, we have been trying that without success. I know that Stephen Wally was working on that, but we can certainly give it another pass.
Can we clarify? Is this a question of not being able to find a contact, or is this a question of the main contacts that we have or have declined?
I think the main contacts we have declined.
Okay. Yeah. Well, then we're probably not going to get a response. I mean, it's if we've talked to Nelly and Gilad and folks like that, and they've said no, then we're probably not going to get it.
Never hurts to ask again. But what I'd like to actually do, Ronak, is if you can share the slides now. I know you've got some edits to make, but if you can go ahead and share the slides now. This may be helpful in kind of getting some of these other folks excited about being part of it as they start to see how it's coming together.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
And just as a tool for helping people visualize what they're going to end up with. So.
Sure. Yeah. We'll do that.
Good.
Okay.
Well, it's always made a lot of progress. How are you feeling about the timing in terms of wrapping things up?
So I think we'll be comfortable in terms of getting the report draft ready. But what happens is post this, as you see, right, a lot of editorial, visual formatting, design is going to take another 2 to 3 weeks of a cycle post that before we can go live, right? So I would say we'll be ready with a draft from a content and key insights perspective, but a lot of synthesis and just getting it together will take some more time. So, and we've given a heads up to our team on the design side, said, hey, this is coming to you. So what we can do is once we are done with the final content piece in terms of, the insights. Are we answering all the questions that we had
Mhm.
started with? Once we have a clarity on that is when we start, processing on that aspect. It typically takes us another 3.5 weeks to get the editorial design formatting done to kind of, get this ready. So that's the added time you need to look at it.
So we're probably looking at that kind of mid-September.
I would say, yeah, that would be ideal for me.
Okay,
Abhishek,
that-
do you
yes.
see any challenges with that?
No.
No? Yeah, okay. Yeah, mid-September sounds good, yeah.
So for the group, I think that this would be a good topic for a press release from the consortium, announcing highlighting the key findings of the report.
So I agree. And since we do have participation in the open source summit, that might be a good time to do that in conjunction in the beginning of October.
Yeah. So kind of put those things together. Yeah, so Stefano, I have no idea what the press release process looks like with the Linux Foundation, but I'm sure you do. So
yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Ashley will work with Craig and his team, and basically you just align. It's similar to the other press releases we've done with the CCC, but yeah, we'll align with Craig's team, and they'll do the release at the time that we'd like it, and then Ashley can work with whoever else wants to line up a bunch of tweets to sort of echo that.
Okay. Does Linux Foundation have any sort of PR outreach that's done to specific reporters?
No, there's no specific connections there.
Okay. Right. We may be asking everyone to pitch in your PR agency to help.
Yeah, exactly.
I think this is a good. I think it's to all of our benefit to get this information out there. I think it's beneficial for the ecosystem, obviously, as we're trying to get new people to join us. It's beneficial for the customers to give this confidence that this isn't just something that being made up. It's actually real. People are going to spend real money on it. And so I think we should all be thinking about, we can have a follow-up conversation in a later session, a later meeting. We all should be thinking about what we want to do to try and promote this and help get this out visible in the world. So,
yeah, and they who should we eventually work with in terms of the publishing of the report on the Linux Foundation website and other things? Would there be a point of contact on that?
Ashley would be the best point of contact on that. So she's got the keys to the kingdom on the rest of that, on all that stuff. The rest of us are just sort of commentators.
Yeah, I think the point here though is, I mean, we know that at a minimum we want to publish this on the confidential computing site, and so that's step one. Then it becomes incumbent on all of the rest of us to amplify that, right? Through our own channels. We can't amplify though until we have the source. So
right, we actually have to get the document done. Yeah, as I say, so mid-September. That's why I was asking time. So if we were thinking about mid-September, that gives us something we can all have in mind in terms of what we might want to do around press releases, social media releases, or mid-September, early October, somewhere in that time frame. Blog posts, whatever it is we want to do about these things. So cool, that's good. I know we're just coming up at the top of the hour here. There wasn't anything else really time critical for today. Dan, I will make a note for next meeting to have the diversity and inclusion topic, if that works for you, our meeting in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, that should be good.
Great. Okay, we'll do that. Any final requests for Ronak or Abhishek or Sushil before they go?
I just sent the three of you a set of times when we are available. So if you can get back to me and let me know if any of those times work for Everest, that would be wonderful.
Great. And then just send me your slides, guys. I'll upload this well to the share, so we all have them in the file share for outreach. Right. All right. Great progress. Good to see everybody. Have a good rest of your Wednesday, and we will talk in 2 weeks' time.
Thanks all.
Take care.
Thanks. Okay. Bye-bye.